Good morning, everyone, and welcome into Wake and Take. It's your boy Jason, and we've got some football to talk about today. Today, I'll be joined by a very special guest, Jonny Tooma, as we continue the trend of breaking down trending NFL news. We're going to talk about the NFL draft. We're going to talk about some free agency. We're going to talk about trades. We're going to talk Rashee Rice. We're going to talk Stefon Diggs. We're going to get a rookie flag plant. We're going to get a hot take. You guys know the formula now. It's going to be a great episode. I'm excited for you guys to hear what Jonny has in store for us. So go ahead, take out your coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Jonny Tooma, how you doing?
Good, man. What an intro. You bring the juice on a Wednesday morning, don't you?
I've been doing this long enough, right? You know, the mornings are my afternoons.
Good stuff, man. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. I mean, as usual here on the guest shows, we're going to get your takes on everything. You know, you've seen the show sheet. I know you're ready, so screw it. Let's just go ahead and get right on into it. But before that, just want to say good morning to everyone. How's it going, Russell? How's it going, Literature? How's it going, Big Country? Good to see you all in the chat this morning. Go ahead and start asking questions. You know we'll get to it at the back of the show. Oh, and my man Jonny brings out the coffee mug. Good morning to you, Jamie. All right, let's talk the trending topics. Let's just go straight with the trending topics. Yesterday we started with the draft, but today we're going to start with the Stefon Diggs trade. What were your first thoughts when you saw it?
Football fan, great. As a Collins and Diggs owner, just like wolf for the next year, you know. There is only one football at the end of the day. So yeah, that's kind of my initial reaction. It's not going to impact Collins for like too long in Dynasty, so I don't think that really affects his value too much. But Diggs, you know, if you're holding him, it's to win now, right? And tough pill to swallow as a Diggs owner.
I mean, you're still probably going to get a better year out of him here in Houston than you might have in Buffalo, just with the way that offense was going. But I mean, I guess we wouldn't know. I mean, like, he was getting fed a ton there. But I honestly, my thinking on this is that all three of those guys, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Diggs, they can all eat next season. We were seeing Noah Brown put up 30 burgers. So I think those guys will be good. They're great athletes. They've already had the connection with CJ Stroud, and Stefon Diggs to be able to get his. But I ask you this question. Is there a Texans player you are specifically buying or selling because of this?
So one note there is, like, I do think that maybe this is an indication that Tank Dell might not just be ho-hum, ready to rock week one. I'm not selling him by any means, but I think to your point, maybe there is enough room for Diggs and Collins to be on the field more often than not at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
But that being said, like, I've seen a couple funky offers come through for Diggs, like thinking that this is an upgrade. So if I have a chance to cash that in, I'm doing that because his value had kind of been cratering with how he ended last season. So I'd probably be selling him if I had the chance, and also selling Schultz if I had the chance. But again, that's just because there's a lot of mouths to feed in this offense. I could eat crow here because, you know, the 49ers have proved that if you're a good enough offense that everyone can eat, right? But that's just my initial kind of take as I'm feeling it out.
Yeah, no, I think definitely if you are not competing, if you are not going for that championship this year, which you always should, guys, come on now, you should move on from Stefon Diggs. I think that this is a great opportunity to flip him. And you could probably take Stefon Diggs right now, and depending on who has Tank Dell, who has Nico Collins, there might be something in store for you to where you could offload Stefon Diggs and get a Tank Dell plus or get a Nico Collins plus. And then you're staying in the same offense and just getting younger. Which I think could be a pretty solid move. So I'm with you there. And I am curious about Dalton Schultz. I still haven't decided how I think about it. I think it technically opens the field up for him, but there's just like what does that mean really? I feel like that means some weeks he's going to have 4 points. Some weeks he'll have 18, you know, and you're never really going to know. So it'll, but you know, at the tight end position, that might be okay. On the flip side of this, What did you think about the Bills offense now? And is there anyone you're targeting in trades on that side?
Yeah, so for them, I think it definitely opens up a lot of targets to go around, right? And I see it as another sign of faith that they're going to continue to feed Dalton Kincaid. I know some people will say that as long as Dawson Knox is in that offense, that he's going to be hindered by him. But I think that he is their number one target as the roster currently stands today. And then, the Curtis Samuel signing was interesting, but I like what I saw from Khalil Shakir. And, depending on who they land in the draft, like if, let's just say they get Brian Thomas or Xavier Worthy or one of those guys, like I wouldn't necessarily consider them a true alpha day one. Not saying they can't become a wide receiver one, but I think that opens up the door for Shakir to actually have like a really interesting profile going into next season. So yeah, those two guys are interesting to me. I don't think they land one of these guys like Odunze or Marvin Harrison Jr. or Neighbors in the draft, but there's been some little grumblings that like that's the type of manager or general manager that Brendan Beane is, right? To move up, get his guy. So, but assuming that doesn't happen, I actually like the way that this impacts Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, I think that those are kind of the two targets right now. They've been inflated, but I think that both will probably at least remain about the same in terms of their value next season. When you look at Khalil Shakir, I was actually shocked. I put together everyone knows here, I'm on the Twitter for our company, and I did the stat of the day a couple days ago, just kind of looking at Khalil Shakir's advanced metrics. And these are stats he led the NFL in. Number one wide receiver, Khalil Shakir, QB rating per target, production premium, target premium, yards per target accuracy, target quality, catchable target rate, and was second in points per target. So, I mean, this guy was actually really, really efficient last year, even if it wasn't necessarily the most fantasy points in the world, and you couldn't really start him until the end of the year. But the last 3 weeks of the season, 16.5 points, 12 points, 17.4 points. I don't think they make this move if they don't feel comfortable in at least part of their wide receiver room, whether that be Dalton Kincaid, whether that be Khalil Shakir. I think that both of those guys should be pretty solid. And you mentioned Dawson Knox. I mean, I know last year Kincaid ended the season really roughly when Dawson Knox returned to the field, but I think in year two, especially with Diggs gone, they can finally move Kincaid back outside a little bit, maybe use Knox a bit more traditionally. And you're talking about a tight end who is really a wide receiver when it comes to Kincaid, and that could be really, really nice for fantasy. So I'm with you there. Is there anything else you'd like to say about the Texans or Bills before we move on?
Yeah, don't sell Josh Allen. Don't panic on that. The guy can run for 2 touchdowns a game if he has to. And this, I know you had a kind of a stance that maybe like CJ Stroud, how high he should be rated in quarterbacks. And I'm not far off with you, like very enticing as a long-term dynasty asset.
Right.
But it's just another flag plant here. Like Josh Allen's still got to be the QB1 in fantasy. Like you just have to look at what he's consistently done to be the number one quarterback. And it hasn't always been being overly reliant on his receivers. Like he can get it done with his legs. So don't panic sell Josh Allen. And don't count out the Bills to do something interesting, like landing someone like Ayuk. I know that's been floating around too. Yeah. It'll be something like that. I don't think that's exactly what it'll be, but you would be upset if you move Josh Allen right now.
I agree. Yeah, if Josh Allen hits the trade block in your league, go try to get him. I don't care what it costs. Just the fact that a player like that even becomes available is enough of a buy window for me. So I like that take as well. Let's move on to Rashee Rice. Just real quick, we're not talking about the situation. There's really no bigger developments, and we have no idea what the NFL or the law is even thinking when it comes to this thing. But we do play fantasy football, and everyone wants to know all of our stances on what we're doing with Rashee Rice. So when it comes to Rice, how are you kind of navigating him on your roster? You buying, you selling, you holding?
I'm sending an offer, right? Like it might not be the best offer, but you never know unless you send something. And oftentimes this uncertainty breeds opportunity. And that's kind of the same thing with, like we were just saying, with Josh Allen. Like, I hate to be that guy, but you lose 90% of the trade offers you don't send, right? So like send some offers if these are guys that you want to target. I personally think he carved out a really interesting role in that offense. And we know the Chiefs are just going to they're going to play him when he's eligible to play. So he could get suspended, but I think he'll be out there again someday and he'll be productive, and you probably get a good – if you put an offer forward that you're comfortable with and someone accepts it, then that's a win in my book.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's going to vary from person to person, but I don't hate buying him. For me, it's still the price kind of has to be right. And I'm more so, I don't know, I would send draft picks if I'm on the clock and not really liking what I'm at, and I could just go get some Rashee Rice. I don't think I'm in first round territory. I think I'm holding those picks right now, but I think if you could get them for a second, we talked yesterday, I think maybe selling him for a very high second is probably okay if you want to move on, but it's such a tough situation. I think one thing we need to come around with as a fantasy community is just suspensions aren't that much different than an injury. Like, like they're just missing some time. You'll replace them and they'll be back. I guess you can't put them in the IR spot, but it's not like Rashee Rice is just never going to play football again. Maybe, right? I mean, maybe he won't ever play football again, but I think that he'll probably at least see the field at some point. I don't know.
I agree with you though about the draft picks. Like, this class is so stacked that a first just I can't even get comfortable with that, So yeah, don't spend too much on a guy, to your point, who we don't know if we'll ever even play again, but
probably will. But I mean, it's a felony, right? He's facing felonies now, and so there's just it's just a whole different situation that we don't really have a lot of precedent on. So anyway, we'll go ahead and move on then. Rashee Rice, we're buying at the right price, selling at the right price. It just varies league to league.
It's all about, right?
Right. The NFL draft is right around the corner, and there's a lot of stuff building up around the fantasy football space, around the NFL draft space. The biggest story going on just throughout this process has been the climbing of JJ McCarthy's draft stock. Are you buying the hype?
Not really. Like, I think the guy's a solid quarterback, so I don't want to bag on him. But I think the thing that I struggle with is just, like I just said, the quality of the athletes in this class. And I just don't know if he's a top 4 pick. Like, I think there's too many almost like generational, and I know some people hate when that word gets thrown around, but like crazy talented offensive players that I have ahead of him in terms of how they stack up to their competition. Right. On position to position. So, I think I was listening to a Player Profiler podcast where the Podfather kind of compared him to Jeudy a little bit. And I actually kind of like the take. Like, he's cerebral. He could win you some games. If the right team scoops him up, it could be a great match. But I do believe that, like, some of these specimens that are out there, I just don't know if he's quite like the prospect freak that some of these other guys are. So I'm not as high on him as maybe other people are.
Yeah, I think this top 5 draft pick notion is a bit too far. I am a JJ McCarthy defender, but my take on this show has pretty consistently remained that it's kind of just reminding me of Will Levis last year, where, yeah, he does have the tools to be a good quarterback. And yes, it makes sense that he's getting steamed up, but is he really going to be a top 5 pick? I just don't know. And I could see him slip a little bit. In my last mock, when I predicted quarterback landing spots, I had him going pick 8. And even that just doesn't necessarily feel right. I had the Falcons trading out. Don't think I'm not having the Falcons take him. But I think that that's probably like as high as he can go. And it'll be interesting just to see what he kind of, I guess, if he goes top 4, we're probably going to see Michael Penix also go in the first round, I would think. Right. So what are you kind of thinking about that situation right now as that hype is starting to build as well when it comes to Michael Penix?
Yeah, so I do agree. I think there's a high chance they both go in the first round. I kind of like the Will Levis comp with JJ McCarthy. Just if you remember all the hype that was coming out around Levis, they're like, this guy's going to be the first overall pick. And you're like, all right, this is just getting wild. Like, so that's kind of similar to JJ McCarthy right now, right? And he's actually done a really impressive job throughout the process, kind of like making it not seem like agent FUD or fodder or whatever you want to call it. But Michael Penix, I'm actually pretty high on him in terms of just like his ability to throw the deep ball. He's just such an interesting prospect as a lefty who can really spin it that well. So, bottom line, I think you've got the Raiders, the Seahawks, even my Broncos that are QB needy teams. Any one of them could pull the trigger. He was in the Heisman conversation last year. I know there's some health concerns, but this is a quarterback league, right? So I think it's a high chance he gets scooped in the first round.
I think so too. With that 5th-year option, I think they've got to go ahead and pull that trigger. One of these teams, hoping it's the Seahawks. I think that would be a very fun reuniting with him and his offensive coordinator, and awesome for DK Metcalf. It would be so good for DK Metcalf. And I want JJ McCarthy to go to your Broncos, as I've seen the mug and the sign. I think that would be a fun spot as well. So we're kind of buying the JJ McCarthy hype in that we think he's a good quarterback, but maybe not top 5. And we're both kind of thinking Michael Penix is probably sneaking into that first round, even if it is a little bit later. So let's switch to fantasy football conversation here. Who's your rookie wide receiver 1? This has been changing. Everyone you ask, I should have been Marvin Harrison Jr., but this process has kind of changed that for a lot of people. Where are you at?
So back at Thanksgiving, I was with my uncle, who's a SEC football, big college football guy, just pounding the table for Malik Neighbors because he's talking to me about Marvin Harrison and how special he is. And I was like, you need to get hip on this guy. He is going to be in the same exact conversation. He continued to ball out the rest of the year. So I have always been huge on Malik Neighbors. That being said, it's like so close for me right now. And my answer is terrible, but there's a little bit of analysis in here. I think I'm still leaning at Marvin Harrison Jr. just a little bit based on name value alone. It's a terrible answer, but it seems to be working for him. Like he's not working out. He's going to go top 5 or 3 still. And the teams are buying it because his dad's doing all the talking. So like in terms of insulated value, it's still just obviously an amazing prospect. And if you have to split hairs, it's like, I'll go with the one whose dad was a Hall of Famer, and that everybody else in the league who maybe isn't as keen on who Malik Neighbors is, the value, they might be willing to grossly overpay for someone like Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, I think it just has to be Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm someone that if this has been the thought since Marvin Harrison Jr. was a freshman at Ohio State, that he would be the number 1 wide receiver when he goes to the NFL. We've been waiting for years now to spend our 101s on Marvin Harrison Jr. And now that he's skipped the combine and not done his pro day, everyone's like, oh, well, we don't have metrics. All these other wide receivers are doing better. Let's just go ahead and go with them instead. But no, you just got to stick with Marvin Harrison Jr. If this is the same kind of situation with CJ Stroud last year, where everyone was saying CJ Stroud was better than Bryce Young. And then the process goes through and he fails an S2 test and everyone's saying Will Levis is better than CJ Stroud all of a sudden. And I can't do it. If a process has remained the same for so long, I'm not letting a few small things change it. Marvin Harrison Jr. has shown way more than enough on the actual tape. Very good athlete. And I just think his floor is so tantalizing for me in leagues. Like I know that Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze have that ceiling, but it's just Marvin Harrison Jr. is so polished. Like it's like a proven and like he will be good. So I want him. I want him any which way you spin it. And that's why I'm highly recommending a lot of you out there to go trade for 102s in your single quarterback league. Go trade for 103s, 104s, 105s, even in your super flex leagues, because there's a potential that if there is 4 quarterbacks taken in the top 5, that Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. are even sliding in these, and you could get those guys way later than you previously thought in this process. So get your early first rounders. It might be Marvin Harrison Jr. at the 103 or 4 in some of these super flex leagues, or Neighbors, who would also be really good. I'm with you in that he's good. It's got to be Marvin Harrison Jr. It just has to be.
Yeah, man. But to your point, this class is just so crazy. Like all the way up to the 108 now, you can start saying like, all right, this is going to be Brock Bowers potentially, because like you could take 4 quarterbacks, the top 3 receivers, and he could still fall there. And I mean, these 3 wide receivers, like different analysts, scouts will tell you Odunse's number 1, right? And so it just, to even, whether you feel that way or not, the fact that he is seen by some, credible scouts as that, like, it's just such an awesome class where if I'm holding the 108 or above, like I am asking for a king's ransom, because any of these guys could be basically the 101 in another draft class. So that's my opinion, but I do think this class is special.
No, I mean, if all of last year's first round wide receivers, Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison, who we'll talk about later, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Zay Flowers, all of those would be going end of first round, second round in this year's rookie drafts. Like, to use a Podfather term, those are fake alpha wide receivers. This year's wide receivers are alpha wide receivers with some truly unmatched potential and ceiling out there. That is just, I'm very, very excited. Like, I've said it 1,000 times now. This year's draft, I am just so pumped for, because landing spots can do so much for so many different players. And it's just, I'm just so excited. I mean, even like down to Brendan Rice. We talk about one Hall of Famer son. We've got 2 Hall of Famer sons. And we have a Hall of Famer nephew in Kamani Vidal, related to Hank Aaron, one of the greatest baseball players of all time. So it's like, we've got some pure blood rookies in this year's draft. I'm just
McCaffrey. You're not going to bring up
Luke McCaffrey. Oh my God. So it's a great class. Great class. I'm just pumped for it. So speaking of, everyone has a different take here. Running back 1. Who's your rookie running back 1?
Yeah, so I'm a bit of a contrarian on this one. I love watching Jaylen Wright. I think he just looks like a rocket ship with the most explosive back in the class, in my opinion, and has the ability to break those long runs. Then the other guy is Johnathan Brooks. And I actually have them like in my prospect models, like dead even. But it comes to obviously landing spot is going to change my final grades on these guys a little bit. And then Johnathan Brooks has the injury concern, right? If he wouldn't have tore his ACL, I would have him above Jaylen Wright. And we've seen that, like, Breece Hall, these ACLs aren't a death sentence anymore, right? And these guys can sometimes come back even the first year and be productive backs. But if I'm like in a slow rebuild, I might lean Johnathan Brooks. If I'm trying to go all in this year and Jaylen Wright gets a nice landing spot and I think he could contribute as a rookie, I'm kind of flipping between those 2 guys right now and waiting for the landing spot to make my final determination. That being said, I am contending in most of my leagues, so I'm kind of leaning Jaylen Wright, just in terms of like, I want a guy who I can plug and play immediately this year. I know they say Johnathan Brooks will be ready for training camp, but like, I'm still a little shaky on those ACLs. I know I just said it's not a death sentence, but it's also not the greatest the year after,
Yeah, it's definitely tough. I think one thing working in Johnathan Brooks' favor that I think will also help his draft capital is that the Dallas Cowboys team doctor is the one that performed his ACL reconstruction surgery. So that little tie there has me just firmly believing he'll go to the Cowboys, and that's just like a special landing spot. And so I do think that Johnathan Brooks, that's a really good value right now, especially when you're looking at like best ball drafts on Underdog or even early startups right now. No one knows what to do about Johnathan Brooks because of the injury. And at some point, he's going to come in and be good and healthy. And so I really like taking a chance on him. And Jaylen Wright, I think, is another just objective answer when it comes to that. I think that's a good one. Matty Kiwu, shout out him. I don't know if he's listening right now, but he listed Jaylen Wright as his rookie running back 1. It was like before the Senior Bowl, even like months back. Like, he was just all in on that guy. Yeah. And then he backs it up with just an insanely impressive combine performance. He will be explosive. And we've seen a Tennessee running back with explosiveness do well in the NFL, a la Alvin Kamara. So I like that call as well. Lots of good rookie running backs. Talked about Braylon Allen yesterday. Now we've got some Brooks and Wright action. Somebody will say Blake Corum. Somebody.
Oh, yeah. Dude, Corum's a solid back. And I think I hate to be like that guy about landing spot, but you brought it up. That Dallas Cowboys landing spot. Like the top running backs they have are Deuce Vaughn and Rico Dowdle.
Yeah.
Like, even if you draft a running back in the 4th round, that guy immediately flies up Dynasty rookie drafts, because that is just such a good landing spot in terms of some of the other teams. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad you mentioned the Cowboys, because I will be really curious, not if they select a running back, but who they select, when they select him. And if it's one of those guys in if it's in the 2nd or 3rd round, this guy could be creeping up at late first of Superflex rookie drafts,
Definitely going. I would not be surprised if a running back sneaks into the 1st round when it's all said and done, because I'm the more and more I look at this, I really think that a lot of these wide receivers are going to fall into the 2nd. I'm not sure what happens behind like Brian Thomas, Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell. I think that's kind of the end of it. And then that's when we'll be talking about like Jonathan Brooks versus Ladd McConkey. Right. And that, or Roman Wilson versus Blake Corum. And I just think that the running back, depending on landing spot, is probably going to win out when it gets to draft time. So final take from the NFL draft. I'm assuming quarterback 1 is Caleb Williams.
100%.
Quarterback 2?
So wait, just real quick on that. I have one tanking team that I named Calamity for Caleb, Collapse for Caleb. I renamed it. So I've been behind the idea that like this guy's going to be number 1. And basically intentionally tanked to get this pick because I didn't like my roster. And I was like, you know what? I need a quarterback. Caleb's a dude. So just want to put that to rest. I know there's some Caleb slander floating out there. The dude is ridiculous. Yeah. I have Drake Maye as my QB2 for a few reasons. I love what I saw from Jayden Daniels last year for the most part. I think he showed like a bit of a tendency to throw darts, like high velocity, low trajectory. And I would have loved to see a little bit more touch on his throws over the middle specifically. And I also think, this is going to sound like a broken record, I get a little bit concerned with his play style and frail build, and thinking that might lead to some missed time. And so like, when I see Drake Maye, this is a guy who's got less time to get polished than Daniels. So he is a less polished prospect, but he's also significantly younger. And the dude like reeks of Justin Herbert to me. I'm probably higher on him than most for making that comp so directly. But I think that's a realistic comp for what Drake Maye can be in the league. So that's kind of my flag plant on rookie QB2. I'm basically decided on it. Regardless of landing spot, I think that's where I'm going to go with my rankings. I know that a lot of people feel differently.
No, everyone has a different opinion. And like I said in yesterday's episode, I'm still kind of flip-flopping. I think I'm going to lock Jayden Daniels in right now as my quarterback 2, just because of the Heisman. And he's the type of quarterback who can just put a team on his back if he has to. But when I see these landing spots, that's totally subject to changing for me. I don't. Caleb Maye or Drake Maye being such a project is what kind of scares me a bit. But that ceiling is so tantalizing. I think if he does get that Commander's landing spot, he does become my quarterback 2, because I do think that that's a really good spot for a rookie quarterback. We're talking about the Bears being really good, but Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson aren't no slouches either. They just got Zach Ertz.
Right.
It's not a terrible, terrible room. And I like Cliff Kingsbury as a coordinator, not as a head coach. Dan Quinn's been a successful head coach before too. So I like that landing spot a lot for rookie quarterback. So if Drake Maye goes there, I'm with you at quarterback 2. But currently, I'm going to say Jayden Daniels.
I didn't realize too how much they had done in terms of like roster overhaul. I was talking to a Commander fan yesterday, and he's like, I'm excited. Like, we've got the second pick. We got Jeremy Chin on defense. Like, they made some defensive investments over the offseason. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think that could be a good landing spot. And I've heard they're high on the guy. So I think it's going to be Maye. And I also think that the NFL gets it wrong with quarterbacks more times than not, but it is always good validation to be like, okay, they saw him as QB2 as well. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. So yeah, I like it. I see a good comment here from Corey. Took Jayden 5 years to do what Maye did as a 19-year-old. So, and this is true. Jaden Daniels took forever to break out. And that's, of course, one of the bigger knocks on him and Penix and Bo Nix and a lot of these kind of 6-year college players because of COVID. It's a really interesting thing that we're all kind of trying to figure out how to analyze the difference between age and rookie and all that stuff with all of this. So anyway, great takes on the NFL draft, great takes on Diggs, great stuff with Rashee Rice. Let's go ahead and just move on to our singular topics, our fun stuff here. We'll start with your favorite player going to a new team, whether that be via free agency or trade.
Yeah, so we're going to do a hot take later. This was almost my hot take, but then I was reading the show sheet. I'm like, I got to put this in here because I'm not going to ignore this. Barkley to the Eagles. Like, it's awesome. And people are like, oh, Jalen Hurts is going to steal all his touchdowns. Like, I truly think this guy could be the RB1 next year. This is the second overall pick in the draft. He had like literally a 9.97 relative athletic score. Like, this guy is a specimen, and behind a better offensive line, on a better offense that scores more points.
Right.
And the thing that I think people are maybe downplaying is like Kelsey retiring as their center could significantly impact that tush push. And a new offensive coordinator in Kellen Moore, who like he didn't come up with that play. I'm not saying they're going to get rid of it entirely, but I think you'd be surprised that maybe they don't use it quite as much. And I also think that Swift fell down at the 1 like a crazy amount of times last year. So that if Swift doesn't fall down at the 1, then those tush pushes don't happen. And Saquon Barkley is the type of guy who's got the powerful legs to push for that extra yard when he's on the 1-yard line. So I think this is an awesome landing spot for him. I'm all in.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. When it happened here on the show, we looked at it. I mean, there were like 93 targets to running backs on the Eagles last season. I want to say Swift and Gainwell and Scott all combined for at least 10 rushing touchdowns, if I remember correctly. And at the very least, there were 20-something rushing touchdowns on that offense, including the tush push. Tons and tons to go around. And I agree with you in that the tush push is going to be harder to pull off without one of the best centers that's ever played the game of football. It's possible they get JPJ in this year's draft, but still it's going to take some time to turn a center into what Jason Kelsey was able to do. And even like we've seen the tush push try to be performed by other teams, and it's not as successful as it was on the Eagles. And I would not be surprised if they do it and they've lost some of their success rate, and that would, turn them off from wanting to do it. And you already bring up the 1-yard line thing. So I think Saquon is destined for success. I don't know if I'll go as far as RB1, but I'll go top 5, Johnny. I'll go top 5.
It would be spicy if I didn't say RB1.
All right, Johnny. Saquon or Christian McCaffrey?
Oh, crap. Now that you put it like that, you have to think about Christian McCaffrey as RB1. Now, the one knock I'll give on CMC is like, and they both have this, it's that miss time, right? Running backs can miss time. CMC, before he has had an amazing stretch in San Francisco, had been knocked on for being susceptible to injury. And I hate to, assume that something like that's going to happen. I don't think it will, but I do like to I personally do believe you can kind of predict injuries, and both of those guys have shown that they can miss time. Assuming that neither of them miss time, I might still slightly lean CMC. I'm not going to draft Saquon over CMC if I'm on the clock. So you got me.
Yeah. A blind listener comes in and says he's got Derrick Henry. So I,
nice.
Bold this morning. King Henry over here. I like that. All right, man. So let's go ahead and talk about rookies. Give me your rookie flag plant.
So, I mean, again, I love the top of this class. Like, I thought about making it Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors. I wanted to pick a guy who should be on radars, and I think will get higher draft capital. And kind of reminds me of like where Tank Dell was at this time last year, a guy who people saw as like a 4th, 5th round guy. Tank Dell went at the beginning of the 3rd, and then people are like, okay, who is this, right? And so for me, it's Jacob Cowing. Played at University of Arizona, played at UTEP before that. He's a 5-year guy. That'll be a knock on him, but he was absolutely crazy productive. And I did not expect him to run a 4.3 at the combine, which is just like found money for me. Same size and height as Tank Dell, so there will be questions there, and he will be slept on. But I do see some Tank Dell in him. Like, the guy is a fantastic route runner. He is tough. He has a nose for the end zone. And I this is just quirk for me. I like watching some of Steve Smith's like receiver film breakdowns. You could tell the dude is high on Jacob Cowing, and for all the same reasons I am. So I think he'll be a name to watch, and someone I think will have a good year in the NFL, especially if he gets in a good situation.
I like Cowing a lot. I had the pleasure of going to the Senior Bowl, and he was one of the wide receivers that just kept making plays. He was a really good route runner, and despite being 5'8", he made some really good contested catches. I remember one, like, he climbed the ladder, like jumped up really high and brought it down. And that's just exactly what you want to see from a shorter wide receiver. Unfortunately, he left with an injury, but then on the flip side, he recovered from that injury very quickly and still went to the combine and ran a sub 4.40. It is like, in recovery from an injury that looked like a knee injury at the Senior Bowl, literally had to be carted away. And that's what you want to see from a tough guy like that. 99th percentile college dominator, 99th percentile college target share, 37% of his team's targets in college went to him. That's alpha capabilities. I like it a lot. I like the Tank Dell comparison. Now, Jacob Cowing never led FBS in receiving yards like Tank Dell did, but he still had 2,000-yard seasons, still had 13 touchdowns last year. And so I like that call a lot. Very curious to see where he could go. Very cool guy too. When I interviewed him, just very like soft spoken, but just like also like just like had like this kind of confidence in his voice as well. Like, just I like it. I like him a lot. Talked well at the combine as well when Maddie Kiwoom interviewed him. So good pull with Jacob Cowing. This is definitely a guy I'll be looking at the end of my drafts for sure. And we see best comparable Elijah Moore. So
did you call him smooth?
Yeah.
His personality, that was my note for him when watching him at the combine. I'm like, dude, this guy is smooth. The way he moved through the gauntlet drills, the receiver drills, just some guys look a little more herky-jerky than others. It's just funny you say he had a smooth personality too, because that is, he's officially smooth. That's my one-word comp.
Yeah, he kind of like talks like this, like it's like a little bit deeper and slower. It's really nice. So cool. He's like, yeah, I can like stop on a dime, and then I can like, really quick. It's like, when it comes to my route running, I just feel like I can just dominate at really all the levels. And it's like, that just sounds really cool. It sounds really cool. Go check out the combine interview compilations found on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. You can probably just search it on our Twitter. Great interview from him. Really liked him. So that's the rookie flag plant. Like it a lot. Very curious to see where he could go. I mean, it could very easily be like a Tank Dell or a Josh Downs, depending on his offense. So good one. Now, we've made it to the hot take portion of the show. I've seen it. I'm excited for it. It's more than just a hot take. It's a good take. So, Johnny, deliver it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that you vetted out my take and you approve it. So my take is that Jordan Addison will finish outside of the top 30 wide receivers next year. I think there's QB concerns there. They got in Aaron Jones as sort of a reliable dump off, which is something that they didn't necessarily have last year. And I think Justin Jefferson is going to be a target hog. And Addison is more of a guy who needs deep throws that are accurate, and that could be a challenge for Sam Darnold now, or maybe whatever rookie quarterback they bring in. That's asking them to throw the toughest passes there are in the NFL, is those kind of dropping them down the bucket on the outside numbers 30 yards down the field. And that's what Addison does. And there's actually some additional data on this that I wanted to bring to the table. Like, he had a pretty concerningly low yards per route run because he ran a ton of routes, and it was below 2 yards per route run. But then it was even more concerning, his first downs per route run. And when you look at the delta between his yards per route run and his first downs per route run, the fact that his yards per route run was higher than his first downs per route run by a statistically significant amount indicates that he's less of a possession guy and more of a big play, deep threat guy. And those types of players tend to have more negative variance the next year. In the data size that I was looking at, it was 20 players who had this same sort of delta that was statistically significant between first downs route run and yards per route run. And 16 out of these 20 guys who have this similar calculation to Jordan Addison ended up having a worse year the next year, because all of this to say he was kind of reliant on touchdowns, big plays to be successful more than being like a true route winner, first down, chain mover, possession guy. That's typically where I like to place my eggs with my receivers, is those guys who are just dominant and target hogs. So I am selling Jordan Addison right now if I can. I think the market on him is a little too high. It's like you could probably get the 107, 108 for him. And again, that leaves you with someone who could potentially be Brock Bowers or Romo Doomsday in a super flex draft. So I wanted to give you all the details so that it wasn't just like an off the cuff. I think it because they got a quarterback downgrade. When you consider the quarterback downgrade with all the things that I just shared, that's why I think he'll finish outside the top 30.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I was selling Jordan Addison last year towards the end of the season when he was just kind of going on that tear, when he was the wide receiver one, just because that type of opportunity is not going to happen again. And he's also not going to be a rookie forever. Like, you're a rookie one season, then that shine wears off, and then 100 other wide receivers come into the NFL that profile exactly like you, that score the same amount of points as you, and then you become like wide receiver 40 the next season. Like, you have to sell players their rookie season when they hit, unless it's like a Jamar Chase level season. And I think Jordan Addison is the perfect player to do that. You have to think, guys, last year, not only did he have Kirk Cousins throwing him the ball, but TJ Hawkinson was out for like the last third of the season. Justin Jefferson missed a ton of time as well. And that led to Jordan Addison finishing as wide receiver 19 in standard and wide receiver 23 in PPR. And to your point of being outside the top 30, he was 30th in points per game last year with all of those positive things kind of helping him. So I think that selling Jordan Addison right now for really any first is probably an okay move. I really, really do think that you could get very similar production, if not better production, with that pick right now, even with a quarterback upgrade. Like, even if they do end up getting Drake Maye for some reason, I still don't see Jordan Addison tapping into the ceiling that he did last season, because I'm in the camp that TJ Hawkinson returns early-ish. I'm in the camp that Justin Jefferson's still the dynasty wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 and gonna be a monster next season.
Right.
So I'm with you on Jordan Addison. I think that this is not necessarily his peak value, but definitely a high enough value that he's going to lose some steam by the time the year rolls around. And you could take Jordan Addison right now, and you could get the Texans wide receivers that we talked about earlier with a cherry on top. You can get DK Metcalf. You could get George Pickens right now, another player who's kind of steaming up. Like, you can get there's a lot of wide receivers. If you're competing, you can get like 3 Cooper Kupps for Jordan Addison. You can get DeAndre Hopkins and so much for a Jordan Addison right now. So I love the sell. I really, really do. And I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. So thank you for the Jordan Addison take. Is there anything else you would like to say just about fantasy football in general before we go answer some questions?
No, man, this has been great. This has been great.
It has. Thank you for joining me. Let's check into the chat. Let's see. We see some questions about Addison. So, 108, 109. I think that's perfect. Let's see. Are you buying the Ladd McConkey hype?
You don't want my take on Ladd McConkey. Nobody wants my take on Ladd McConkey. My big thing with him is he did not he didn't get enough targets last year to even qualify for most of my prospect models. So I see all these models like, man, this guy's running 5 yards per route run. It's like, yeah, because he played like 6 games and ran like 50 routes total. And yeah, they threw him the ball when he did. He had trouble staying on the field with injury. He played special teams like as a gunner, not just like a kick returner. They were throwing this guy out there to like play special teams. And it's just, I think it's a little wild that people are like, he's so good. I do think he is a great route runner. I don't want to overly hate, but I am definitely out at cost in terms of like him sneaking up because I do value production. And again, he drew less than 40 targets all year, regular plus college football playoffs last year. And that just really blew my mind when it was like, oh, Troy Franklin or Ladd McConkey. And it's like they both have the same amount of yards per route run, but one's ran 4 times more routes. You tell me what's more impressive, you know? So, and I'm not even high on Troy Franklin. So, but anyways.
No, that's what I like Ladd McConkey as a football player. I've said it a million times now. I just don't know how that's going to translate to fantasy football. I've got to see where he lands before I can get out over my skis on this guy. I mean, I've seen him go at the end of first rounds, very early in the second, and I just don't get it because if you want Ladd McConkey, draft Roman Wilson around later who has a better production profile, who looked just as good at the Senior Bowl, if not better.
Yeah.
And has the same exact profile, if not better. So I don't understand it too much. I think that a lot of it is just he's going to be a good football player. I like special teams. I think that helps you get a roster spot. And I do think he's going to get targets next season. It's just I want to see the landing spot. I don't know how this is going to translate to fantasy. So I'm with you. He's got steamed up too high for my liking too.
Is his name seriously Ladarius?
I don't think so. I think it might be, but either way, I think it's just Ladd. What do you got for the ceiling and/or floor for Jerry Jeudy in 2024?
Ooh, dude, I don't know if this guy has seen my previous takes because I was like the biggest Jeudy truther last year, and I got humbled real quick. But I will say that guy was open. He was open. I'm a Broncos fan. They were just like Russell had something off in his brain. And that's why he got like Peyton would be screaming at him on the sidelines. And you'd look at the play that was happening previously. And it was because Judy's running wide open. So I think the guy's fantastic. I think he can get separation. I think he could be I'd say my ceiling for him is a wide receiver 2. My floor is like not a startable asset. You know, there's some mouths to feed there. But they just paid that guy a ton of money. They clearly see something in him. So I have him in a couple dynasty leagues. I acquired him last year for a decent, what I felt was a fair value. And I'm just going to hold him and hope that he can get back into that wide receiver 2 range.
Yeah, I'm with you in that. I kind of like Jeudy too. I agree. He just kind of gets open. But I don't believe in Deshaun Watson anymore. I've completely lost all faith in that guy. And I really don't know how much there is to feed a Jeudy. I know he got the money, but David Njoku and Amari Cooper went on a tear last season. And Nick Chubb's going to be back, so they'll be running the ball more. I'm just not sure how much volume can be going Jerry Jeudy's way. So I'm a bit hesitant, but I do like him. I don't like Deshaun.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And on the same thing, is Elijah Moore dead? Has Elijah Moore, has all his hype been killed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I mean, he may still play that slot role for them, right? And maybe there's some production, but I think it just goes back to what Jason was saying. Like, you've got Deshaun Watson questions. You'd prefer Joe Flacco throwing that football from a fantasy perspective, right? So if you can sell Elijah Moore and recoup some of your investment, probably not a bad idea if there's someone who still has hope for him.
Definitely. I see a question over on Instagram as well. Would you trade the 101 in Superflex? So would you trade Caleb Williams for Travis Etienne and the 104?
Maybe. I like Etienne a lot. I think he had some woes behind that offensive line because the line was so bad. Like his efficiency was down. But if you think his efficiency was bad, look at Tank Bigsby's. Like this guy was the worst running back in the NFL by almost every metric. And again, it's probably more attributed to their offensive line play and just seeing how much better Etienne's efficiency numbers were than Bigsby's leads me to believe that he wasn't the problem. He still showed a lot of explosion when he was able to find a little running room. He's just so lightning quick. And so you just start to think about, okay, this class is so deep. I'm either going to get a really high-end quarterback or another really high-end receiver to pair with ETN. If you're set at quarterback, maybe, but yeah, I'm not sure I would say it's fair on paper, but I do see that the of like that 101 to 106 range is actually closer than you'd think,
Yeah. No, the 104 is a good pick. I think I'd want like one more fun coupon, like see if they could throw a second your way or something.
For sure.
Because Caleb Williams is like that guy. And so
Yeah,
like,
you got to push for way more, but yeah, I agree with that.
But it's not a solid offer. C. Jordan, 11.23. Not a bad offer at all. So, Johnny, why don't you tell the people where they can find you? Great episode with me today. Thanks a ton for joining. Send the audience over your way.
Yeah, so Player Profiler News Desk, that is what my main kind of thing that I'm working on some stuff behind the scenes with Player Profiler. But the main thing that we're doing is getting out videos, blurbs from experts who are covering specific teams. So I would say to the audience, bookmark playerprofiler.com/news and subscribe to the Player Profiler News YouTube page. It's a separate YouTube page where we're posting breaking news as it happens. And it's great. I mean, we have really grown this team a lot. It was like a 4-person team when we started, and now we've got this robust team that's putting in a bunch of really good work. We've also got draft coverage on there. So make sure you are staying tuned into the Player Profiler news channels, because like I consume all sorts of these updates and news sources to kind of stay up to date with what's happening in free agency and all that stuff. What I like about our news page is we really come in and provide some concrete, actionable advice from a fantasy football perspective. So if you're looking for that, you should be checking out our news page.
Yeah, the Player Profiler News Desk is just unbelievable. Really, really great stuff going on over there. So shout out to you, Brendan, Mike, and of course, Bradley Stalder for just getting that all organized. I know do you have a night on Player Profiler today as well now, or helping out there?
Not yet, but if that's a thing, let me know.
But yeah, all of that great stuff, man. So make sure you go check out the news desk. Go follow Johnny. Oops, I have Brendan down here for you. Didn't change the name there. Sorry. Go follow Jonny Tooma on Twitter, FF Academy Johnny. Yes, that's right. Yes, FF Academy Johnny. So make sure you go follow him there. Great stuff there as well. So thanks again for joining me. Great episode. Had a ton of fun with you. We'll have you back on, of course, audience. As always, great job. I'll see you all tomorrow with another guest at 10 a.m. Eastern on Player Profiler, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe. Have a wonderful Wednesday and a fantastic rest of your week. Peace.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com. Dynasty Deluxe, world famous draft kit, rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.